Shouldn't we do all we can to help the poor? Well, I think the answer is yes. The question is how. One way that's been proposed to help the poor is rent controls. Obviously, rich can afford to live anywhere, but it's the poor among us who really has a hard time getting a decent place to live because they have very low income. Now, one way to deal with this is to simply say that the rents in your community are too high. So here we have a supply of rental units and we have a demand. Now let's talk just a second about that. On the supply side, it's pretty obvious that as the rents go up, and that's what price represents here, would be the rents, as rents go up, those who have housing stock would be more willing to put that stock on the market. And as rents go down, they're less willing to put it on the market. And there's other ways that suppliers can respond as well. But primarily, suppliers of rental units, like anything else, like high prices, and they don't like low prices. They'll do something else with their money if the return on their investment is too low, and they'll do all they can if the return on investment is very high. Demanders, of course, very sensibly, for any apartment, demanders are going to want to have lower rents, and the lower the rents, the more quantity demand there'll be for apartments. Well, you understand the equilibrium argument already, that there is a equilibrium level of rent and an equilibrium amount of rental units being consumed by renters. Well, perhaps this is too high. And because it's too high, the local government comes in and says, you know what, it ought to be illegal to charge anyone a rent that's above the rent ceiling. Now, a rent ceiling, like the ceiling above your head, you can go anywhere under it you want, but you can't go over it. So we can go anywhere under this red line, but we can't go over it. So what happens? Rental units, when priced at PE, would only have Q sub E demand. But now that they're lower, there is, let's just write it as Q sub D, that would be the amount of apartments that people want to rent. This is a pretty good deal. Lower rents, more people want these apartments. More people can afford them. Now, this is a great thing, right? But here's the problem. Suppliers not able to get as high a rental rate will do a number of things to try to compensate for that. And in the main, will stop renting some of the units. And you say, well, where do the housing units go and all of that? Well, could be I sell it to a commercial firm. I turn it into a condominium, or I do all kinds of things. But clearly, I'm not going to offer as much rental service, and that's going to turn out to be quantity and quality if the price is not very high. So since we've picked this rent ceiling, QS is all there is in terms of supply. Well, geez, okay. What happens if quantity demands are very high and quantity supply is very low? This difference economists refer to as a shortage. That is, we want more demand, or we have a greater demand for apartments than there are apartments available. Now, part of this could be because the rents have gone down in, say, Akron, and people from surrounding communities are now trying to express their demands here as well. But here's the insidious part. It's not just helping the poor. Since QS is the only amount of apartments that's going to be on the marketplace, demanders, collectively, they will value the apartment at P, we'll call it max. That's the maximum rental price that could be had. Now, another way of looking at this is suppliers only had QS on the market, then it would be valued at P max. That's what the demand curve is. It is the willingness and ability to pay the maximum price that consumers are willing and able to pay. So let's put yourself in a poor person's position. There's a shortage. It's hard to get apartments. So you go and you try to find an apartment, and what happens is the rental agents aren't very happy to see you and they don't spend much time with you. But let's say you're an up and coming young professional and you hasten into this marketplace and you see one of these rental agents and you say, I'd like to have one of those apartments. Well, I'm sorry, there's quite a shortage and we don't seem to have a lot available. I can put you on the waiting list or something. Well, there's a whole list of things in your text that talks about if price doesn't allocate, what does? Discrimination, bribery. How about bribes? If I'm a young, upwardly mobile professional, I can afford that PMAX. Now, I don't want to pay it, but you know what? I'm not going to get the apartment if I don't. I'm going to pay a bribe equal to the difference between PMAX and PC. I'm going to get the apartment, not the poor person. So one of the problems with rent controls is it drives people who need the support the most out of the market. Well, I said at the beginning, we probably ought to be helping the poor who can't afford housing. How could we do that? How about a direct subsidy of dollars to them? Can't afford housing? Here's a housing allowance. Go compete with everybody else. But now you have a housing allowance. That way we target money only to those we determine worthy. Now, how many do we determine worthy? That's a different issue. Very few, a whole lot. But the point is, they now compete on an equal footing with everybody else, and there's no abuse. Well, what kind of abuse do we see here? One is this ill-gotten gain, if you will, for those who have housing units. They're charging what you'll later come to find is monopoly rents. And what you'll also discover later on is that there is a lot of welfare loss in this, which we will call deadweight loss. Now, what is a deadweight loss? There's a lot of value indicated by the demand for apartments that could not be had. And the cost of having those apartments is actually kind of small relative to that. Society is worse off, and that's what the deadweight loss is. Hope this helped.